This happened just a few months ago. I was settling into my new life in the suburbs, trying to escape the noise of the city after my divorce. I thought yard sales would help me feel connected to my new community. I wasn't much of a yard sale person before, but I felt hopeful about starting fresh. I've never stopped thinking about it. That first Saturday, I went to a sale across the street. The sun was shining and the sound of distant lawnmowers filled the air. I saw tables filled with old toys and dishes. Most things looked normal. I started browsing, picking up a few knickknacks. I was just about to leave when I spotted an old camera sitting on a rickety table. It was covered in dust. The seller seemed a bit odd, talking too fast while his eyes darted around. I asked about the camera. He hesitated, answering strangely. I bought it anyway, thinking it might inspire my work as a graphic designer. After using the camera, strange things began to happen. I took a few photos in my garden. Later, when I looked at the prints, my heart raced. In one picture, there was a shadowy figure standing behind my fence. I hadn't noticed it when I took the shot. I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Maybe I was just imagining things. I figured I'd try my luck at another yard sale the next weekend. I found some old toys and a vintage typewriter. But when I checked the pictures again, I saw that same shadow from before. A chill ran through me. I thought I should just let it go, but I was drawn in. Each yard sale became another chance to uncover bizarre items. I picked up a broken watch and an unfinished painting. With each one, strange details showed up in my photos. Each time, the unease grew heavier. One night after those sales, I sat in my living room with the camera. I felt uneasy. It was late and the house was quiet. I went through the photos again. I could see strange faces peeking from behind things. I swear I heard whispers. I didn't know if it was nothing or just the settling of the house. I was on edge, unsure of what was real. It continued at the neighbor's yard sale. I saw them at the door, but they didn't seem like the same people. They had this odd glare, like they were judging how I picked through their things. I felt my pulse quicken. I took a picture of the items on display. When I looked later, they were gone, and there was a figure standing behind me. It was too close. I stared at that photo and felt my heart drop. I should have sold that camera, but now I was stuck in this nightmare. I wasn't sure if I was cursed or just losing my mind. What I know for sure is that I can't stop thinking about it. Then I heard someone knock at my door. I didn't want to open it. I didn't feel safe. I stood frozen near the door, heart racing. The knock came again, steady but soft, like a whisper convincing me to open up. I backed away from the door. Was it just a neighbor, or had I crossed into something that could not be explained? I listened closely, my breath shallow. The house felt too quiet, too still. The fear clawed at me, pulling me closer to the door against my better judgment. I needed to know who was there. I slowly crept toward the peephole, my hand trembling. But when I looked out, I saw nothing. The porch light flickered, creating shadows that danced along the floor. I wanted to call out, but the words caught in my throat. I turned away, dismissing the moment as my imagination, until I heard it again. Tap, tap. This time it was different. It was lower. I felt a chill creep up my spine as the realization hit me. It wasn't just at my front door. It was coming from the window. I rushed to the living room, my heart pounding. I peeked through the curtain, and my breath hitched in my throat. A figure stood just outside, veiled by darkness. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, perhaps a shadow cast by a passing car. But then it stepped closer. I couldn't make out its features, just a silhouette that sent shivers coursing through me. I fumbled for my phone, wanting to capture the moment, but my hands shook too much to hold it steady. Then it vanished. Just like that, it was gone. Confusion twisted inside me. Had I imagined it? But I couldn't shake the chilling unease. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but I didn't even know what to say. I could hardly breathe. Instead, I turned my attention to the camera on the table. I grabbed it, desperate for something to latch onto. The last few photos played through my mind, and I knew I had to check the most recent prints. Maybe it would help explain what I'd just seen. I pulled out the stack, pressing the button to advance the film. My heart dropped again as I caught sight of the last image, a blurred figure in the foreground staring straight at me. I gasped. There was no mistaking it. The same dark presence I saw outside was in my photo. I could feel the weight of its gaze piercing through the paper. Panic surged inside me. It was becoming clear that whatever I had invited into my life was getting closer, watching me, and I had no idea why. I dropped the photos, scattering them across the floor. Just then, the knocking began again, but this time it was louder. I flinched, feeling frozen in place. I wanted to scream, to run away, but my body wouldn't obey. The knocking turned into aggressive pounding, shaking the door. Someone or something was in my house. I backed away, my mind racing. I had to think fast. Then everything went dark as the lights flickered overhead and went out entirely. I stood in the pitch-black living room, the pounding on the door resonating like a drum in my chest. Panic clawed at my throat. I needed to get out of there, but that meant moving toward the door, toward whatever was waiting for me. My heart thudded loudly, and I strained to listen. Nothing. The house was eerily silent now. The knocking ceased. I felt lost, trapped inside my own mind. The darkness pressed against me, smothering. I needed a light. I shuffled through the shadows to the kitchen, my fingertips grazing the counter, searching for a flashlight. My breath hitched again as I remembered the feeling of being watched. I flicked open a drawer and found a small flashlight. I took a moment to steady myself before clicking it on. The beam pierced the darkness, revealing the mundane kitchen I knew so well. But something felt wrong. A strong chill ran down my spine. I felt, I don't know how else to say it, alive, like my senses were heightened, tingling with every sound and shadow around me. I shone the light toward the living room doorway and froze. Footprints. In the dust on the floor, there were distinct, wet footprints moving from the door toward my camera. They looked almost human, but were far too large. I squinted, stepping closer. My mind raced with questions. How did these get here? I knew I hadn't let anyone in. As I followed the tracks, they led straight to the pile of scattered photographs. I felt an invisible pull toward them, a dread I couldn't quite shake. I knelt down, my pulse quickening again. I began to sift through the photos, the flashlight beam dancing across the prints. I flipped over a few more, and that's when I saw it. A collection of figures in the background of one, a crowd of people, all wearing the same thick, dark coats. They were all staring at the camera, eyes gleaming in the flash. A grotesque layer of familiarity washed over me. They looked too much like the figure I had just seen outside. Was it my imagination, or did their faces change a little each time I glanced back at the image? I felt dizzy, like I was being pulled into the scene. I fumbled and dropped the flashlight, the beam rolling across the floor. As the light danced, a faint sound echoed from the front of the house. It was a whisper, muffled but distinct. "Come, join us." I gulped as icy fingers crawled up my back. Without thinking, I scrambled to my feet and bolted back to the living room, the darkness swallowing me whole. I reached for the door, feeling the handle, but I hesitated. What if they were out there? Then the door creaked open slightly. My heart raced. I could see a tiny sliver of light from outside, illuminating the darkened hallway. Hesitantly, I pushed the door just enough to peek out. That's when I saw it. The dark figure stood silently in the light, face obscured by the shadows. It was waiting for me. Before I could react, a hand, a cold, eerie hand, grabbed my shoulder from behind. I gasped and whipped around, but no one was there. I was truly alone. Or so I thought. I stepped back, heart racing, trying to assemble my thoughts. My body felt heavy, like a weight pressing down, urging me to run. But where? The figure remained outside, lurking just out of sight, and the coolness of the hand that had gripped my shoulder still lingered. "Just breathe," I whispered to myself. I needed to face this, whatever it was. I glanced down the hallway, where shadows danced against the walls. I could hear the echoes of my own heavy breaths, a reminder that I was alive, however terrified I might be. I turned back toward the door, my hand instinctively brushing against the frame. I flicked the flashlight on once again. Its beam steadied my nerves. I breathed deeply, then pushed the door wider. The chill spilled into the house, wrapping around me like tendrils of fog. Outside, the street was quiet, but a slight rustle in the bushes made me freeze. I raised the beam of light, scanning the area. My heart sank when I spotted a coat hanging on the fence, similar to those worn by the figures in the photographs. It looked fresh, still glimmering with raindrops. I inched closer. The whispers returned, clearer this time. "Join us. It's easy." I stumbled back, panic flooding my veins. I turned, intending to slam the door, but a shape caught my eye. The figure that had been waiting was now gone, replaced by a swirling mist that seemed to dance against the empty street. Suddenly, I remembered the photos in disarray on the floor. That crowd of faces. It couldn't be a coincidence. I had to know what was going on. I dashed back inside, skidding to a halt as I kicked the flashlight toward the kitchen. The beam illuminated the scattered images, each one a piece of the puzzle I needed. I sank to my knees, frantically flipping through them. The room hummed with an unsettling energy. In one photo, a woman stood prominently, her features sharp and clear. In another, she was gone, fading to shadow, replaced by someone else in the crowd. I felt a connection to her, a strange pull that made my skin crawl. Just then, the floor creaked behind me. The sound was unmistakable. I turned, and my breath caught in my throat. The figure was back, standing at the edge of the beam, now closer than before. Its face remained hidden, blending into the shadows. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, shuddering. "What do you want?" Silence enveloped. The figure simply stood there, as if challenging my resolve. My hand trembled as I instinctively grabbed a photo from the ground. The woman's image stared back at me, her eyes pleading. I had to find out who she was, and then it hit me, a horrifying realization. What if the others had joined her? Before I could process the thought, the lights flickered overhead, plunging the room into darkness. I felt the air shift, thicker, as the whispers crescendoed. "You're one of us now. You can't leave." My heart thundered in my chest. The finality of their words sunk in just as the flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into complete blackness. I stumbled back, trying to regain my balance in the pitch-black room. My instinct screamed at me to move, to escape whatever horror lurked within the shadows. But the reminders of the past haunted me. The captivating images, the misty figure, the whispers that clawed at my mind. I could almost feel their cold fingers brush against my neck again. Before I could gather my thoughts, a loud crash shattered the silence from the kitchen. My heart raced. It sounded like something had fallen, or worse, someone had entered. I held my breath, listening intently for more noises. The darkness felt thick, wrapping around me like a blanket. If I moved, I would have to do it quietly. I groped around for something, anything to defend myself. My fingers brushed something cold and metallic on the floor, and I grabbed it.
A small kitchen knife. It felt reassuring in my grip, but the slightest sound might give me away. I took slow, careful steps toward the direction of the crash, every nerve in my body on high alert. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely audible. The echoes felt strange, unnatural. No answer came, but the chirping of crickets from outside had faded away. An eerie stillness replaced it. I crept into the kitchen, heart in my throat. As I entered the room, the moonlight barely illuminated a figure hunched over the table. I froze, knuckles white around the knife. "Who are you?" I tried to sound commanding, but the tremble in my voice betrayed me. The figure turned slowly. It was a man, pale, with wild eyes that glinted in the dim light. He looked familiar. I felt a jolt of recognition. He was one of the faces in the photographs I had seen earlier. "Help me," he whispered, voice hoarse. "You have to get out. It's coming for you." A chill went down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Don't let them take you," he urged, shaking his head violently. "They want you to join them. They already have my sister." He gestured to the scattered photos on the table. "You shouldn't have looked. You should have stayed away." The whispers escalated, now rising to a chaotic chorus around me, clawing at my sanity. "Run," he insisted again, "now." As the whispers grew louder, I
glanced toward the shadows coiling in the hall. The figure, my phantom pursuer, stood there, just outside the moonlight's reach, now more defined. Something twisted in its eyes, a hungry, expectant look. Then everything shifted. The room around me spun violently. The man at the table began to disintegrate, like ash scattering into the night air. I blinked, and within a moment he was gone, leaving nothing but a fading echo of his plea. With an instinct I couldn't fight, I bolted toward the door at the far end of the kitchen. I flung it open, adrenaline pushing me into the dark, empty night. The street felt alien. The mist that had once danced was now closing in, wrapping tighter around me. I cast a glance back at my house, the windows flickering with an unnatural light. And that's when I saw it. The shadow moved through the hallway, beckoning me, pulling me back. I stumbled back, torn between the urge to flee and the pull of the familiar. It was far from over. The mist swirled around my feet as I stood frozen on the street. I could still feel the weight of the knife in my hand, but the comfort it had given me was fading fast. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the panic. Running blindly wouldn't help. I needed a plan. That's when I noticed a flicker of light breaking through the shadows at the edge of the yard. My neighbor's porch light was flickering, barely visible through the thick haze. Maybe someone was home. Maybe they could help me figure this out. I took off toward the house, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I approached, the whispers from the house faded into a soft hum, almost like a lullaby. I shuddered but pressed on. I rapped on the door, my heartbeat drowning out the silence around me. No response. I knocked again, harder this time. Finally, the door creaked open. My neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Halston, peered out at me with wide, confused eyes. "What on earth?" she started, but I interrupted her. "Please, I need help. Something is wrong. There was a man in my house, and he told me to run." Her expression turned grave. "You should not be out here. It's not safe at night." She glanced over her shoulder, then pulled me into the house and shut the door firmly. "Tell me what happened," she urged, her voice tense. I recounted everything, the man's plea, the whispering shadows, even my uncertainty about everything I'd done or seen. Her eyes widened with each detail, and when I finished, she exhaled deeply. "I've heard stories about that house," she said quietly. "They say it's a place where people get lost, a curse of sorts. They say those who investigate never return the same." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "People walk in there expecting answers, and they leave with nothing."
At all. As her words sunk in, the house seemed to breathe, the walls creaking as if echoing her ominous warning. "I have to go back," I said, feeling the pull of my home stronger than ever. I can't let it win. I have to find out what's happening. Mrs. Halston gripped my arm, her voice sharp. You have to be careful. You don't know what's waiting for you. With a sudden intensity, I said, I saw the man in the kitchen. He faded away. Her eyes widened. Then that means he's marking you. He won't let you go. I swallowed hard, the fear solidifying in my gut. I knew I couldn't walk away. I had to stop whatever was coming. What do I do then? Stay near the light, she advised urgently, and whatever you do, don't turn your back. With that, I stepped back toward the door, my resolve hardening despite the dread building inside me. I nodded to Mrs. Halston, her concern hanging like a shroud between us. Stepping out into the mist once more, the shadows seemed to close in. As I made my way back to my house, I could feel the whispers rising anew, echoing warnings in a frantic melody. Then, in the distance, I heard another crash, this time from the basement. I froze, the blood draining from my face. Someone, or something, had ventured down there. Now I knew I wasn't alone. As I moved closer to my house, my heart pounded louder than ever. The air outside felt thick, almost like a heavy fog pressing down on me, and I had this nagging sense that I was being watched. Every part of me screamed to run, to find safety, but the basement door loomed in my mind, pulling me toward it. I reached my front porch, the steps creaking under my weight. I took a moment to gather myself, feeling the knife still clutched in my hand. It was a reminder, a promise to myself that I wouldn't let whatever was haunting me get the upper hand. With a deep breath, I turned the key in the door and stepped inside. The darkness swallowed me instantly, but I quickly found the switch and flicked on the lights. They flickered nervously before settling into a steady glow, illuminating the familiar space. The house felt different already. I could sense the chill in the air deepening, as if the very walls were holding their breath. I moved cautiously toward the basement door, its presence looming at the end of the hall like a dark sentinel. I hesitated, recalling Mrs. Halston's warning. Stay near the light. But I couldn't turn my back now. There was a force compelling me forward. It was time for answers. I opened the basement door, and the dim light barely touched the stairs below. The sounds of my footsteps echoed as I descended, each step feeling like a countdown. The last few steps creaked ominously underfoot, and at the bottom,
The basement was darker than I remembered, shadows pooling in the corners. I scanned the room, my eyes darting around, searching for movement. That's when I saw it, a small, flickering light at the far end, close to the old furnace. A soft glow, almost like a candle, beckoning me closer. The whispers returned, louder this time, chaotic and desperate. I tried to ignore them, focusing on the light instead. I stepped carefully toward it, wading through the musty air. As I got closer, the candle's flame danced wildly, casting strange shapes against the walls. I knelt closer, squinting, when suddenly the glow snuffed out. The darkness closed in on me, and a chill crawled up my spine. Then I heard it, a soft rustling that made my heart jump. I looked up, and my breath hitched. There, standing next to the furnace, was the man from my visions, fluidly formed like smoke, yet undeniably present. His eyes were locked onto mine, and the shadows seemed to stretch toward him. I should have felt fear. I should have screamed. Instead, I felt paralyzed, my body caught in a fight-or-flight instinct that wouldn't respond. "Why are you here?" I finally managed to stammer. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Panic swelled within me, swelling the walls of my throat.
I turned to run, but as I did, the whole room plunged into darkness. The power was out. My instincts kicked in, and I dashed toward the stairs, adrenaline pumping through my veins. But then I heard it, a soft, urgent whisper right behind me. "Don't leave." It was a plea, but it wasn't a plea for help. It felt like a warning. I barely made it halfway up when I stumbled. My hand shot out to catch myself against the cool, hard steps, and as I turned to look back, the darkness swirled. What had I become a part of? That was when I realized it. I was the one getting lost. The old man stood closer now, and I knew I had two choices: face him or let the shadows consume me whole. Desperation clawed at my chest, but before I could decide, the voice came again, louder this time. "Stay." And just like that, I froze. The basement door slammed shut. I stood at the bottom of the steps, frozen in fear, as the heavy thud of the basement door echoed in the stillness. The darkness engulfed me, and the air felt heavy, thick with anticipation. I could barely make out the outline of the figure in front of me. He was closer now, and the whispering shadows churned around him like a living thing. "Stay," he said again, this time with a sense of urgency that struck deep. I could feel the weight of his gaze, the intensity of his presence. I tried to gather my thoughts, but they scattered like leaves in the wind. What did he want from me? Why was he here? My mind raced, but all I could hear was the thumping of my heart. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice trembling. But he didn't respond. Instead, he raised a hand, and suddenly the darkness pulsed as if it was alive. A single light flickered on the wall beside him, revealing an old photograph hanging crookedly. The distant glow illuminated the faces of two people I'd never seen before. They looked familiar in a way I couldn't place. I leaned in for a closer look when a loud bang reverberated through the basement, jolting me back. My pulse quickened. I whirled around, pointing the knife toward the sound, ready for anything. But it was only a wooden crate that had toppled over in the corner, something that had been, no doubt, sitting there for ages. "Get out!" came the voice again, this time sharper, like a cracking whip. The figure flickered, and I watched as he seemed to grow fainter, the shadows scattering around him. "No!" I yelled, frustration creeping into my voice. My mind was racing. "Don't go! Tell me what's happening!" For a brief moment, the room fell silent, and I could hear my own breathing echoing louder than before. Just when I thought I was alone again, a cold breeze swept through the basement, causing my hair to stand on end. I turned, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure moving in the far corner. I blinked. It was distorted, but there, unmistakably, were the outlines of faces twisted in horror. They seemed to watch me, suffocated by the very shadows that bloomed around them. "Leave this place," the whisper urged again, thick with desperation. "You don't belong here." Panic surged through me. I felt the urge to flee. But as I turned back to the stairs, something cold gripped my ankle. My heart raced as I looked down to see a chain. I had never seen it before, black and rusted, coiling around my leg like a serpent. I pulled and twisted, but it held firm. The whispers grew frantic, swirling into a cacophony, urging me to turn back, to stay, to unravel the mystery right in front of me. I was trapped. I didn't know if I was veering toward an answer or plunging deeper into the darkness. Then, in a chorus of chaos, I heard a name echo through the shadows, a name that sent chills down my spine. Eleanor. Suddenly, everything flipped. The candlelight flickered back to life, illuminating the figure of the old man who stood boldly before me. The atmosphere changed. The fear morphed into a strange sense of clarity. "Who is Eleanor?" I gasped, my grip on the knife loosening. He opened his mouth to answer, but then static filled the air, cutting his voice off. The shadows danced wildly, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to converge into one point: the man, the chains, Eleanor. And just like that, the basement door shuddered open behind me. I was
Torn, the urge to escape mingling with the desire to understand. I took a step back, facing the man. But as I did, I caught sight of a reflection in the old furnace's glass door. A face, familiar yet distant, watching me intently. Then everything changed again. An overwhelming force pushed me toward the door. I had to choose. I stumbled back, my heart pounding against my ribs. The basement door loomed behind me, promising escape. Yet all I could focus on was the reflection in the furnace door. The face was hauntingly familiar, as if it were a piece of my own puzzle, lost and now found in the shadows. "Eleanor," I whispered again, half hoping that saying her name would make it clearer. But instead, the name just hung in the air like a heavy fog. I needed answers. Finding my footing, I turned back toward the man. His expression was urgent, and the shadows seemed to cling to him, begging for my attention. "You need to listen to me," he shouted, his voice breaking through the static. "They're here for you." Before I had a chance to process his words, the shadows behind him surged forward, as if alive, swallowing the light and plunging us back into darkness. A chill shot up my spine. The desperate warning drove me to the edge of panic, and I tore at the chains around my ankle. "Let me go!" I screamed, but the rusted metal refused to budge. The air shifted again, weighted with something dark and heavy. I felt it creeping in, unfurling like a sinister fog, crawling up my legs and tightening its grip on my will. The man's figure wavered, as if the shadows were reaching for him too. "Please, you aren't safe," he pleaded, and then his face morphed into something grotesque. I blinked, and suddenly he was replaced by the twisted faces I'd seen in the corner. Their eyes were wide, unwavering, filled with fear. "Eleanor," they whispered, pulling me deeper into the chaos. I gasped, my breath hitching in my throat. The whispers escalated, surrounding me, telling me things I couldn't grasp. I was drowning in a tide of confusion and fear. What happened to Eleanor? Who were these faces? Then the tremor of the basement shifted, jolting my focus back to the door. I could feel it trying to call me away, a beacon of light contrasting the consuming dark. Pain shot through my leg as I pulled again at the chain. I was determined to break free. Desperation surged in me. I couldn't let whatever was pulling me down consume me. In a sudden flash of rage, I smashed the knife against the chain. It struck metal to metal, reverberating through my bones. I needed one more strike, just one. Then, with a desperate yell, I swung the knife down again, and this time the blade sliced through the rusted links like they were made of nothing. A jolt of freedom flooded my leg. I could move. I took a step back, stumbling not just from the relief, but the staggering realization of choice. The basement door stood wide, no longer a distant promise, but an urgent plea to escape. But the figures, the faces swirled around me, crying out, "Stay, stay with us." Their voices knit together, merging with the static. I glanced back to the man as he strained to reach me, his hand outstretched. "Eleanor needs you!" he shouted, desperation lacing his voice. As the shadows pressed in, I took a breath, making my decision. My feet shuffled backwards toward the light of the door. But Eleanor's name echoed louder, wrapping around me. What did they know? And just like that, a cold hand gripped my arm. "Wait!" I twisted around, heart racing.
The shadows lunged forward, eager to pull me back, just as the candlelight flickered ominously behind me. My heart was caught between questions as I felt tugged by both fear and urgency. Should I flee into the light, or was the truth waiting for me in the dark? With all my strength, I yanked my arm free from the grip of the cold hand, twisting toward the basement door. The light felt like a sanctuary, pulling me in with a force that overshadowed the lurking dread. Shadows writhed at my heels, but I bolted, desperation overriding every instinct to stay and uncover the truth. I sprinted up the basement stairs, the door a mere few steps away, and without a second thought, flung it open. Light flooded in, spilling over me like a warm embrace. I rushed through, leaving the darkness behind. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt an unsettling shift. Heart racing, I turned back to face the basement. The door shuddered as if something unseen rattled against it. I steeled myself, scanning the familiar space. The whispers faded, leaving an echoing silence, yet I knew I was not free yet. I stepped into the hallway, the air lighter, but still electric with tension. The house felt different, everything familiar, yet the shadows still lurked, their presence lingering just out of sight. As I glanced around, confirmation kicked in. I was still being watched. I made my way toward the living room, the stillness around me sharp and brittle, making my skin crawl. Every creak of the house felt like a warning. The camera lay where I left it, on the table, but its lens seemed to glimmer ominously. I approached it cautiously, my fingers hovering above it. Should I look again? The door swung open behind me with a slow creak, and I stiffened, my breath hitching. I turned, expecting someone or something waiting for me. But it was just Mrs. Halston, worry etched into her features. "Are you all right?" she asked, stepping slowly into the room as if to gauge the atmosphere. I stopped, unsure how to define what just happened. I was in the basement. The man from before. He tried to warn me. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. "I told you it wasn't safe." "I know, but—" I struggled against the whirlwind of thoughts. There were more people down there. Faces, all of them twisted. They're connected to the shadow. Mrs. Halston shook her head as if to dispel my words. "You need to leave this place. You shouldn't be entangled in that chaos." A rush of anger surged through me. "But I can't. What if Eleanor is one of them? I need to know who she is, what they want." "Sometimes it's better to leave the past buried," she cautioned, her voice trembling slightly. "You're putting yourself at risk. They won't stop. Can't you see? It's not just about me anymore," I shouted back, my emotions boiling over. But deep down, I felt the weight of uncertainty settle around me, nagging at my mind. "Then you must be careful," she pressed, her gaze serious. "Whatever you do, don't let it lure you back in." With that, the tension between us felt palpable, an electric current threatening to snap. As her words hung in the air, a thought crashed against the forefront of my mind. Maybe I had become part of something that was beyond my control. Just as the weight of realization settled in, a blaring sound broke through the stillness. A loud knock at the door, heavy and cruel, sending a jolt through me. I exchanged a glance with Mrs. Halston, a shared understanding passing between us. Whatever was outside was not merely a figment of my imagination. "It's happening again," she murmured, inching closer to the door. "Don't open it," I urged, fear wrapping its cold fingers around my throat. She hesitated, glancing back to me. "I need to see who it is." "No!" I cried out, reaching for her arm, but it was too late. With a final bracing breath, she turned the knob slowly, the door creaking open to reveal nothing but darkness outside. An unearthly silence enveloped us both, thick, suffocating. I strained to hear anything, yet the whispers had gone quiet. Suddenly, it felt as if the very walls were listening, waiting. The night shifted, a breeze sweeping in as shadows stretched and retreated. Then, out of the dark, I saw it, the outline of a figure stepping closer, veiled in shadow, face obscured. The whispers returned, intertwining with the stillness. I instinctively took a step back, heart thundering within my chest, as the figure paused, hovering at the threshold of light and dark, as if questioning whether it should enter. "Stay with us." It was the murmur of many voices now, echoing with familiarity. Mrs. Halston's expression turned white, eyes wide with realization. "No," she breathed, shaking her head, and then, as if aligned with some sinister intention, the figure moved forward, crossing the threshold into the glow. I made my choice. In that moment, I bolted past Mrs. Halston, fueled by fear and determination. I raced through the hallway toward the back exit, feeling the weight of the shadows pulling behind me. I burst through the door, stumbling into the night. The air felt foreign on my skin, sharp and electrifying. I turned back, breathless, staring into the darkness that had consumed so much of my life. But even as I stood on the edge of freedom, the question lingered. Was I truly free? What had I left behind? As I stood in the glow of the moonlight, I knew one thing. The answers were never as clear as they seemed. The shadows whispered still, and I wasn't sure if they had moved on, or if they were waiting just behind me, ready to strike again. I took a deep breath, uncertainty settling within me, a reminder that some mysteries were better left unsolved. I looked down the street, the glow of a street lamp illuminating my path forward. One thing was certain. I was not the same person I had been before all of this began, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be again.